Your product roadmap is a lie, and what's worse, you know it, I know it, your team knows it, but we keep pretending that those colorful boxes on Miro represent reality. Last week, I was talking to a colleague, also a product professional, and he proudly showed me his 12-month roadmap. 12 months. So I asked him, when was the last time everything actually went exactly as you planned 6 months ago? And then came a series of excuses. Well, you see, it's not that simple, and so on. Anyway, what stuck with me from that conversation was a big reflection on why we lie, why we deceive ourselves, why we turn uncertainty into a fictitious timeline. In reality, most of the time, and I might even dare to say almost always, we invariably turn to and rely upon certain established methods and approaches. Uncertainty into a fictitious timeline. When we look at a roadmap as if it was set in stone, as if that's it, let's go, we have a plan, and we're just going to come out the other side with the results we mapped out. And I want to emphasize the word mapped out here, because in reality, when we develop a roadmap, create a timeline, or make a plan, in reality, we're just mentally anticipating a snapshot, if I can put it that way, poetically speaking, of what we imagine and would like to happen. So in fact, we do turn uncertainty into a fictional timeline, right? At least most of the time. We do have the ability to reduce these uncertainties a bit, for sure, right? I'm not saying here that we're against predictability, but predictability has always been uncertain. So besides this reflection, another thought that comes from this conversation I had with my colleague who was showing me how he organized his 12-month roadmap is, what are we doing with our products and our teams? What expectations are we creating? What frustrations are we causing, right? And then I started thinking about a story, and I'd like you to follow along with me, okay? To illustrate even more what I'm trying to say, all right? So imagine a fintech company with 200 people, a growing product, and the PM puts together a beautiful roadmap roughly structured like this. Quarter 1, new onboarding. Quarter 2, notification system. Quarter 3, marketplace. Quarter 4 is the integration. The PM presents it to the board. Everyone approves. The stakeholder is super happy. In fact, all the stakeholders are happy. The sales team already sees themselves selling. They start selling the quarter 3 features related to the marketplace. Then March comes, and they discover that 40% of users abandon the platform on their first login. A complete pivot, you can imagine, a total pivot, chaos, and onboarding becomes the absolute priority. It takes 4 months instead of 2. Notifications are postponed. Forget about the marketplace for now, and it ends up becoming an inside joke. And then December arrives, they deliver half of the improved onboarding and a beta version of notifications. The original roadmap is barely recognizable. So when we look back at this story, after this story that I'm telling you, I imagine it probably even reminds you of something. I don't know if it triggered anything for you. Sorry if it did, but I'm sure this happens. You've experienced it because it happens in 90% of companies, 90% of the time, practically. I don't think I'm exaggerating here, but I've seen this happen many times, almost all the time. So what does this that I mentioned with the insight I had at the beginning, at the start of our conversation here, the insight I had from talking with this colleague of mine, that we really turn uncertainty into a fictitious schedule. And then we spread this story, so to speak, in quotes, creating expectations for several people that this is going to happen, that it's reality, right? But here, if we think about what the problem with all of this is, right? What is the real problem that happens when these situations occur? Obviously, this doesn't happen 100% of the time, but it happens quite often. What's the problem here? Are we bad at planning? I don't think so, right? Or are we bad at planning? I think that reflecting on it from my point of view, the problem is that we treat the roadmap as a contract when we should be treating it as a hypothesis. So I think it's important for you to keep this in mind. Roadmaps are not contracts. They should be seen as hypotheses. As a set of hypotheses that I hope to achieve, that I hope to validate, that I hope to develop, that I hope will lead to certain results. Anyway, think about this with me. A traditional roadmap in the end assumes 3 things that are fundamentally false. The first is that we know exactly what the market will want 6 months from now. That's not true. We don't know what the market will want in 6 months. So, in an economy where startups are born and die within quarters, where regulations change overnight, where consumer behavior shift in a matter of weeks, where, let me even bring back an old term here, kind of old school, let's say, the VUCA world, the VUCA context, which I think still fits perfectly with the current times. How can we, in a completely and utterly uncertain, ambiguous environment, where things now change so incredibly rapidly, where things change in an overwhelming and truly profound way, how can we realistically expect to predict with absolute precision what will genuinely happen 6 months from now and adequately prepare for that specific outcome, instead of wisely preparing for the inherent uncertainties and potential eventualities? I think the big question is, yes, we should have predictability. That's obvious. Companies want it, we want it. Working with predictability is much more appealing than working, thank you, in a truly random and unpredictable world, but we absolutely need to carefully think about and thoroughly prepare for various uncertainties so that we can genuinely and effectively understand precisely what to do, exactly how to do it, and specifically when something significantly different from what we originally planned or initially envisioned ultimately happens. So, the second important topic here, which is fundamentally false when it comes to the traditional roadmap, is the idea that we won't learn anything new during execution. As if every feature delivered weren't an experiment that generates data which could change everything. In other words, if we think we're going to start developing something, and during that development, I'm already talking about downstream, during that development, we won't learn or change anything, we're really fooling ourselves. In fact, when we start development, we have a series of, I'm not even saying this is a problem, I see it as an opportunity. We have a truly great opportunity to significantly change what was originally planned. In a detailed refinement session, we can effectively bring it into the practical world, making it a tangible reality. In a refinement session with the entire team, with your dedicated squad, etc., you have a valuable opportunity to thoroughly review what you envisioned, to carefully revisit what you planned. When you're in a refinement session with your team, regardless of whether you've previously gone through other sessions with different levels of the team, with engineering, architecture, and so on, depending on the process you follow, when you get to that technical refinement moment with your team, it's an excellent opportunity to see it as just that, an opportunity. Some will say it's too late. No, it's not too late. I think that it's always the right time for things to change for the better. So when we have this mindset that I'm open to listening to other people's points of view and to recreate in my mind new paths, new connections, so that this value can be generated in a more interesting way, or in a way initially that I imagined, and suddenly I thought the path I had envisioned was the right one, but in reality it shows me that it's not. I really need to understand that we are going to be learning all the time, or at least we should be learning all the time. Even when I already have something in downstream, I can still learn about it. And I should learn and redo, rethink, change the course. I think this is interesting all the time because we are in a completely volatile environment. It's a totally fluid world in the sense that things change, that things really happen differently from what we imagined. And then the third, the false assumption, so to speak, that we have when working with a traditional roadmap is that our delivery capacity is predictable, that it is 100% predictable, and it's not. We completely ignore the fact that that senior developer might leave, that professional, that quality professional might be absent during the period, and then usually the overall quality testing flow, usually depending on precisely how you calibrate your entire flow, is already a significant bottleneck in your structure. So imagine for a moment that you had initially assumed that all of the people involved would indeed be present and accounted for, and furthermore that these individuals would consistently work at the usual expected productivity pace that they normally do day in and day out without any significant deviations or interruptions. And then, quite unexpectedly, you come across something truly remarkable that in the end has completely slipped out of that romantic predictability we usually tend to wholeheartedly believe in. So believing that our current delivery capacity is truly predictable is fundamentally and entirely false, because we often forget that things might not always work out precisely as we originally imagined them to be. So there could be a problem with an API, an integration that seems simple can turn into a much bigger nightmare lasting 3 months and so on. Unpredictable things can happen, things we thought were certain, things our spreadsheet said were correct, our boards, etc., and yet things slip away. Why do we keep pretending? I think it's primarily because we often tend to treat the roadmap not merely as a comprehensive planning document, but rather, unfortunately, as a more tactical and often politically charged document. That's precisely why we typically find ourselves needing to utilize the roadmap as a powerful political tool, primarily to effectively show that the various stakeholders' extensive wish list is indeed prominently included there, and that we are, in fact, genuinely committed to achieving a certain specific set of objectives. Result: a certain delivery by a certain deadline. In other words, we end up managing the expectations of stakeholders and the whole company in the wrong way. So because we focus on we focus on turning the roadmap into something to calm anxieties, to create the illusion of control, to align unrealistic expectations, and in reality, it ends up straying from its true nature, which is to be an artifact, a tool for planning, not a political document. Actually, everyone truly knows, I know, and you also know, that for the most part, schedules, detailed roadmaps, and comprehensive action plans are more than just simple documents. Being a document of practical utility that will ultimately become a practice, more than that, it is also a political document. And it's okay for it to be a political document. The point is not just, let's not ignore that it is a political tool and work only from a planning perspective. That's not it. The point is, make it a document truly about comprehensive planning, a detailed planning artifact, and also a significant political one, so to speak, because you absolutely need to carefully manage people's expectations, but then turn them into something as close as humanly possible to realistic expectations, so that you really, truly don't end up creating a truly bad outcome for yourself, for your dedicated team, and so on. For the entire product area, because you ultimately end up spending all of your valuable time defending precisely why you did not deliver what you had originally promised, what you had explicitly committed to deliver. So when we focus too much on the political side, saying, Gillian, no, it'll work out, nay, staying in that Pollyanna world and so on, and less on the practical side of planning and really looking at expectations, at what is actually real, and understanding that I don't know what might happen. I have a minimum level of predictability based on what I understand today, based on my past history, and based on, or what is more or less a sense of what I imagine my future will be. If I can really understand and accept the fact that I don't have full control over what will happen, and that everything could turn out differently from what I imagined, and how I prepare for that, how we as a team prepare for that, then I can deliver a comprehensive roadmap that's much closer to the actual reality, right? I can effectively manage people's expectations in a far more assertive and confident way. In other words, I can also skillfully play the political role that is inherently part of our responsibilities, but in the very end, I absolutely do not end up with a truly frustrating and deeply disappointing result of saying to myself, damn it, we finally got here, we successfully reached point B, but unfortunately there's a significant problem, completely different from what I imagined, in a totally catastrophic way. So the ideal is that you really focus on more realistic planning, starting from the principle that you don't know anything. And another thing, I'm not saying you need to abandon roadmaps, I'm just saying you should stop lying through the roadmap. So to help you stop lying through roadmaps, I'm going to suggest 4 actions here, 4 small changes you can adopt to lessen the burden of a roadmap that's highly likely to be fictitious. So the first action is to publicly admit uncertainty. So here's a practical example. Instead of saying Q2 notification system, still using our earlier example, Q2 notification system, you would consider Q2 exploring solutions for low engagement with notifications being the main hypothesis. So here you're already broadening the perspective of what you're going to deliver. Obviously, it seems less impressive, right? But in fact, you're being more honest now because you want to deliver a notification system. That's what you planned. However, when you say you're exploring solutions for low engagement with notifications as the main hypothesis, you're broadening your perspective a bit, allowing for changes, making it clear that it's inherent, that you allow yourself and even start to cultivate a little bit, even if you think you don't have that power. Try to change the culture a bit in the sense that, man, I want to deliver a notification system. The snapshot I'm taking of this moment is a notification system, but I don't know if reality will turn out differently. Remember that quote from Cole, that the map is not the territory? That's exactly it. It applies perfectly here. So Q2 notification system, you turn it into Q2, exploring solutions for low engagement with notifications being the main hypothesis. And then the second small change could be to create roadmaps with an expiration date, right? Just like yogurt, the roadmap also has an expiration date, 6 weeks at most, 3 months, a quarter. So instead of you simply delivering a roadmap with just the update date, it's important that you also specify that it is valid until a certain date. So you give a time frame, you already show that validity horizon of that roadmap to whoever you share it with. Then after that, you will do mandatory reviews based on what you've learned. And then, and also make it clear that the roadmap, make sure to state this, declare that the roadmap is a living document. It's subject to changes all the time. So you should include this as a note. This is what I usually do. I add a note stating that it's a living document subject to changes. So there's the update date when it was last updated, meaning I understand and show what the cutoff point is for what I'm presenting. And I also add the validity date for that roadmap. This is quite interesting and usually helps calm things down and brings more clarity. It reduces anxiety and provides more. It prepares stakeholders in case any changes happen. This is very important. The third change I suggest is to turn your roadmap into a system of bets. So we bet that if we deliver X by Y, we'll achieve result Z. So when Z doesn't happen, the bet failed. It's not a personal failure, it's just data. So when you thoughtfully look at your entire roadmap as a significant bet, I'm genuinely betting on something, on a specific hypothesis. I'm truly betting that we're going to successfully deliver a certain particular thing. You also give it a distinctly different connotation. And in the end, you're not creating how exactly can I put this? A problematic situation. A make-believe situation just for show. No, what you're really doing is following the true nature of planning. In reality, planning is betting. To plan is to bet that a certain context, those circumstances will happen as you imagined. Nothing more than that. So when you incorporate this communication of bets into your roadmap, when you think in terms of bets, you also manage expectations in the best possible way. So the fourth change, and I think this one might sting a little, so to speak, is to stop using the roadmap to manage leadership's anxiety. I know it's incredibly challenging, but if we truly endeavor strategically and thoughtfully to discover effective ways to genuinely transform this current reality, even within the confines of our very own dedicated team, specifically in your esteemed product development team, I firmly believe this approach will undoubtedly yield exceptionally positive and sustainable results in both the medium and the long term. You know what I mean? Because if you're CEO, and I'm mentioning CEO here, but it's not always the CEO, sometimes it's a product leader or someone else, right? We usually end up generating and using the roadmap to ease this leader's anxiety. And I think that's really wrong, honestly. I think we're going completely down the wrong path. But then going back to the CEO example, if your CEO needs absolute certainty about the future, the problem isn't your roadmap. It's the organization's maturity in dealing with ambiguity. So I know it's hard. It might sound like it's easy for Evelyn to say this, but in practice, things don't work that way. I have to deliver a roadmap. I have to keep that CEO happy with what he's going to read. I don't even know what to say, guys. Seriously, I don't even know what to say. But anyway, lastly, I think you should measure the success of your roadmap not by how many features you delivered on time, but by how many smart decisions you made based on what you learned along the way. It's as simple as that. So I think a roadmap that changes, it's not a sign of poor planning or that something was wrong. It's a sign that you learned, that you allowed yourself to learn from the things that happened along the way. So it's interesting to also look at it from this perspective, to weigh things up and understand that it's okay we changed because some things happened. Oh, these were things I didn't foresee. These were things I romanticized too much at the beginning. Okay, now you've learned that you shouldn't do that anymore. So when you also start to ease up on that strict mindset that if I didn't fulfill, if I didn't deliver what I committed to deliver, that's where the problem lies. The problem is simply there. When you start to take that heavy perspective off this fact and begin to understand that in reality, you allowed yourself to learn that things have changed, and that makes all the difference. I think the team grows, you grow, it makes all the difference. Let me ask you, is your next roadmap going to be just another piece, just another act in the corporate theater, or will it be a truly honest document about how you intend to discover what really matters? Because in the end, the difference between average and exceptional product professionals isn't in their ability to predict the future, but in the courage to admit when we can't. And in the action, in the attitude of building systems that make us smarter as we learn. In the end, our ability to learn is what really matters, right? So, my dear folks, I think that's it for now. I believe we can certainly talk a lot more about these fascinating topics in the very next episode. I truly hope you thoroughly enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you all next time. Bye-bye.